All right, you fuckers, welcome to another deep dive. Let's just cut the crap and get right to it. This whole second Cold War bullshit is being thrown around like a goddamn frisbee these days. And honestly, it's got me wondering if we're about to replay history's greatest shit show, or if the media is just jerking us around.
Yeah, it's a total mind fuck, right?
One minute it's all about China, the next it's about Putin and his goons, and sometimes feels like they're both ganging up on us for a tag team ass kicking.
It's enough to give you a goddamn aneurysm trying to figure out what the hell is really going on.
Exactly. Wikipedia even has a whole damn page dedicated to Second Cold War, and it mentions both of those countries. So what the fuck is going on here? Are we talking about some Cold War sequel nobody asked for, or is this just a new level of fucked up geopolitical bullshit?
Well, to be fair, the term Second Cold War has been floating around since, forever. Even back when the First Cold War was supposedly over.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah, seriously. Back in the 80s, some brainiacs were already calling periods of tension with the Soviets Cold War II. It's like this ghost of geopolitical fuckery that just refuses to die.
So you're telling me this whole second Cold War talk isn't some new trend? What makes now so special then? Did Putin finally get bored with playing shirtless cowboy and decide it's time to fuck with the world again?
Well, the term definitely got a lot more popular during Trump's presidency, especially with all that trade war and tech rivalry bullshit with China.
Yeah, it was like watching two toddlers fight over a broken toy.
Except the toy was the entire global economy, and the tantrums involved nuclear weapons.
Trump, what a loudmouth asshat. But was he onto something with this whole China showdown, or was he just being a dick and stirred up shit for the hell of it?
Well, the Biden administration is trying to avoid the whole Cold War label altogether. They're all about peaceful coexistence with China, you know?
Yeah, right. Like anyone's buying that bullshit.
But when it comes to Russia, things definitely took a turn for the worse after they snatched up Crimea back in 2014.
Yeah, that whole Ukraine situation is a clusterfuck of epic proportions.
Even the UN Secretary General was calling out the Cold War vibes back in 2018.
Really?
He basically said the Cold War was back with a vengeance and compared it to a shitty sequel that went straight to DVD.
So is everyone just itching for another global standoff? Are we all supposed to be building bunkers in our backyards and hoarding ramen noodles?
Hold your horses, cowboy. This situation isn't exactly a carbon copy of the original Cold War.
Oh, really? So what's different this time? Are the stakes even higher?
It's a lot more complicated than that. For starters, there's a lot more economic entanglement between the U.S. and its rivals these days.
Okay, I'm listening.
Back in the good old days of the Cold War, the U.S. and the Soviet Union were practically playing economic dodgeball, trying to avoid each other at all costs. But now, the U.S. and China are practically joined at the hip economically.
So you're saying they're kind of like a couple in a really fucked up relationship where they're totally addicted to each other, but also secretly want to kill each other?
You got it. It's toxic codependency on a global scale. Plus, the whole ideological battle lines aren't as clear-cut this time around either.
How so?
The original Cold War was all about capitalism versus communism. This epic clash of ideologies, a battle for the soul of humanity or some such bullshit. This time, it's more about who gets to call the shots on the global playground.
So less about spreading democracy and freedom, and more about who gets to be the top dog in the global pecking order. Sounds like good old-fashioned power politics to me.
You hit the nail on the head. It's all about economic dominance, military might, and technological supremacy. And let's not forget about the battle for hearts and minds, the constant propaganda war that's being waged online and in the media.
It's like everyone's competing in the propaganda Olympics, trying to win over the global audience with their own version of the truth.
Exactly. And how does all this play out in the real world?
Yeah, how does this whole second Cold War thing actually manifest itself? Are we talking proxy wars, cyber attacks, espionage, and all that cloak and dagger bullshit?
Well, we're already seeing all of that, to varying degrees.
Like what?
Proxy wars have been heating up, with the U.S. and Russia backing opposing sides in places like Syria.
Makes sense.
Cyber attacks are becoming more frequent and more sophisticated, targeting everything from government institutions to critical infrastructure and espionage.
What about
that shit never went out of style.
So basically, it's like a Cold War buffet, a little bit of everything, with a side of existential dread.
Pretty much. But here's where it gets really interesting. And potentially dangerous.
Uh-oh. I don't like the sound of that.
The whole second Cold War framework might be misleading, even dangerous. Some experts argue that framing the situation in those terms is like trying to jam a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't quite fit.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Why is this second Cold War idea potentially dangerous? Lay it on me.
Well, the term Cold War evokes memories of a very specific historical period,
Yeah, like what?
a time of nuclear brinkmanship, ideological fanaticism, and two superpowers locked in a global chess match. But this time around, the players are different, the motives are more complex, and the stakes are even higher. We're not just dealing with two superpowers anymore. We've got multiple power centers vying for influence.
Like who?
China, Russia, the EU, India, you name it. It's more like a free-for-all brawl than a carefully choreographed dance.
So what you're saying is this whole second Cold War thing is a bit of a lazy oversimplification, a catchy headline that doesn't really capture the nuances of what's actually going on.
Exactly. It's a convenient narrative, but it might be blinding us to the complexities of the current geopolitical landscape. By fixating on the Cold War analogy, we might be missing the forest for the trees.
What do you mean?
We might be overlooking other pressing threats,
Like what?
like climate change, global pandemics, and economic inequality that could have even more devastating consequences in the long run.
Okay, fair point. So if second Cold War is the wrong term, what the hell are we supposed to call this shit show? The Great Global Clusterfuck. The Age of Anxiety 2.0.
That's the million-dollar question, and honestly, I don't think anyone has come up with a good answer yet. But one thing's for sure, this ain't your grandpa's Cold War.
That's comforting,
Yeah.
sort of. So where do we go from here? What can the average schmuck do to navigate this crazy mixed-up world? Do we just throw up our hands and surrender to the inevitable chaos?
Hell no. Giving up is for pussies. The first step is to understand the forces at play, to see through the bullshit and propaganda that's being pumped out by all sides.
So we all need to become armchair diplomats and intelligence analysts. Sounds exhausting. I'd rather just drink beer and watch football.
It doesn't have to be that complicated. You don't need a PhD in international relations to be an informed citizen.
So what do we need?
It's about being curious, skeptical, and willing to dig a little deeper.
Okay, Professor, give us the Cliff's Notes version then. What are the key takeaways for our listeners who are probably too busy getting drunk and watching porn to become geopolitical experts?
First, be skeptical of everything you read and hear, especially from sources that have a clear agenda.
Okay, that makes sense.
Look for multiple perspectives, even those that might challenge your preconceived notions. Second, understand that the world is complex and interconnected. What happens in one corner of the globe can have ripple effects everywhere else.
So you're saying that we need to start thinking globally and not just locally?
Precisely. We're all in this shit together, whether we like it or not. And finally, don't be afraid to ask questions, to challenge the status quo, and to demand better from our leaders.
So what you're saying is we can't just sit back and let the powers that be dictate our future. We need to get involved, make our voices heard, and maybe even raise a little hell.
Now you're getting it.
Well, folks, there you have it. It's a brave new world out there. Complex, unpredictable, and full of potential pitfalls. But it's also a world full of opportunities for those willing to engage, to learn, and to fight for a better tomorrow.
It's a wild ride for sure. And while it might not be exactly like the old Cold War, there's a shit ton of tension brewing between the US and these major players. Let's break it down. First up, China.
All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room, China. They've been on a tear lately, economically and militarily. Are they really the biggest threat to the U.S. right now, or is that just a bunch of fear-mongering bullshit?
China's playing the long game, man. They're building up their military, flexing their muscles in the South China Sea, and throwing their weight around economically. They want to be the dominant force in the world, no doubt about it.
And how the hell is the U.S. supposed to deal with that? Are we just going to roll over and let them walk all over us?
It's not that simple. Remember all that economic interdependence we talked about?
Yeah, the toxic codependency thing.
Exactly. The US and China are like two guys chained together at the ankle. They can try to move in different directions, but they're always going to be connected.
So it would be a really bad idea to try to break up, so to speak.
Yeah, it would be economic suicide for both countries to completely decouple.
So what, we're just stuck in this fucked up dance with China, trying to cooperate and compete at the same time? Sounds exhausting.
It's a delicate balancing act for sure. The U.S. wants to maintain its global dominance, but it also needs to find ways to coexist with a rising China.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
And it's not easy, especially when you've got two different political systems and ideologies clashing.
Okay, enough about China. Let's talk about the other big baddie on the block, Russia.
What about them?
They've been causing trouble for decades, and now with this whole Ukraine mess, things seem to be escalating to a whole new level of fucked up. What's the deal with Putin and his crew? Are they just trying to recreate the Soviet Empire? Or is there something else going on?
Putin's playing a different game than China. He's not necessarily trying to dominate the world economically or technologically.
So what's his game then?
He's more focused on restoring Russia's geopolitical influence and prestige,
In what way?
especially in its former Soviet sphere of influence.
So he's basically a nostalgic dictator who wants to turn back the clock to the good old days of the USSR. Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
He's definitely got a chip on his shoulder about the collapse of the Soviet Union. He sees it as a historical humiliation, and he's determined to make Russia a great power again, no matter the cost.
And how does that play out in the real world? Is it just about invading neighboring countries and flexing military muscle? Or is there more to it than that?
It's a combination of things.
Like what?
He's using military force, like in Ukraine, to assert Russian dominance in the region. He's also using energy as a weapon, manipulating gas supplies to Europe to exert political pressure.
It's like he's got a whole arsenal of dirty tricks.
And he's meddling in elections and spreading disinformation online to sow chaos and undermine Western democracies.
So he's basically a master manipulator who's using every dirty trick in the book to get what he wants.
He's a shrewd operator, no doubt about it, and he's
Yeah.
playing a dangerous game, one that could easily spiral out of control.
So we've got China trying to become the next global superpower, and we've got Russia trying to reclaim its lost glory. What the hell does this all mean for the average person? Are we just pawns in their geopolitical chess game?
We're not just pawns, we have agency, and we can make a difference. But first, we need to understand the stakes. This rivalry between the US, China, and Russia is shaping the world we live in, whether we realize it or not.
Okay, give us the lowdown. How is this geopolitical power struggle affecting our everyday lives? Don't spare us the details.
It's affecting everything from the prices we pay at the grocery store to the security of our online data.
Seriously.
This competition for resources, markets, and technological dominance is driving up inflation, creating supply chain disruptions, and fueling cyber attacks.
So we're all paying the price for this geopolitical pissing contest, even if we don't realize it.
Exactly. And it's not just about economics. This rivalry is also shaping the global balance of power, influencing everything from international alliances to the spread of democracies.
So this is some serious shit. It's not just about abstract geopolitical theories. It's affecting our lives in concrete ways.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to pay attention, to be informed, and to engage.
Okay, so we get it. This new Cold War, or whatever the hell you want to call it, is a big fucking deal. But what can we, as regular people, actually do about it? Do our opinions even matter in the grand scheme of things?
Our opinions absolutely matter. We need to be informed citizens, demanding accountability from our leaders, and pushing for policies that promote peace, cooperation, and global security.
It sounds like a tall order. But you're saying that we can't just sit back and be passive observers in all of this.
Exactly. We need to be active participants, shaping the future we want to see. And that starts with understanding the challenges we face and the forces that are shaping our world.
All right, Professor, you've given us a lot to think about. But before we wrap this up, I have one more burning question. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the goddamn room, nukes.
Yeah.
Everyone's shitting their pants about a nuclear apocalypse. Are we all going to be reduced to glowing dust? Or is that just Hollywood bullshit?
Look, nobody wants a nuclear war, okay? It would be like playing a game of chicken where everyone loses if someone blinks.
But isn't all this global big measuring inherently dangerous? I mean, one wrong move, one miscalculation,
Yeah.
and we're all toast.
Yeah, the risk of miscalculation is always there, especially when you've got multiple players with itchy trigger fingers and massive egos. It's like a bunch of drunk idiots juggling live grenades. Sooner or later, someone's gonna fuck up and blow us all to hell.
So what the hell can we do about it? Do we just stock up on duct tape and bottled water and hope for the best?
No, we can do more than just hide in our basements, okay? We need to push for more dialogue, more transparency, and more cooperation between nations. We need to build trust, establish clear lines of communication, and find ways to de-escalate tensions before they spiral out of control.
That sounds like a fucking fairy tale, Professor. You really think these power-hungry assholes are going to sit down and sing Kumbaya together?
It might seem like a long shot, but it's the only way to avoid a catastrophic outcome. We can't just surrender to fear and cynicism. We have to believe that a better future is possible and work towards it.
Okay, let's say we manage to avoid blowing each other up with nukes. What's the end game here? Are we just going to be stuck in this perpetual state of tension and rivalry? Is this the new normal?
That's the million-dollar question. The future is uncertain, and there's no easy answer. But one thing's for sure, this rivalry is going to shape the world for generations to come.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? What can they do to survive and thrive in this crazy, fucked up world?
Stay informed, engage in constructive dialogue, and hold your leaders accountable. Support organizations working towards peace and diplomacy. And, most importantly, don't give in to fear and despair.
Well, there you have it, folks. The world's a goddamn mess, but it's not hopeless. We've got the power to change things, but it's going to take all of us working together. So get off your asses, get informed, and get involved. The future isn't going to fix itself.
Well said. And remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand the forces shaping our world, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the challenges ahead.
All right, that's a wrap for today's deep dive into this whole second Cold War bullshit. We covered a lot of ground, from the economic and military dick-measuring contests to the existential threat of nuclear annihilation. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two and are now sufficiently terrified and motivated to make a difference. Stay curious, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay the fuck away from any glowing mushrooms. This is the Deep Dive. Signing off. So, are we headed for another Cuban Missile Crisis? Should we all be building bunkers in our backyards and stocking up on Twinkies? Give it to us straight, Doc. What's the worst-case scenario here?
Well, the worst-case scenario is obviously a full-blown nuclear war, and nobody wants to see that happen. But even if we manage to avoid a nuclear holocaust, there are still plenty of other risks to worry about.
Like what? Don't sugarcoat it.
We could see an escalation of proxy wars, more cyber attacks, increased economic warfare, and a general erosion of trust and cooperation between nations. It could be a very dark and dangerous world, with everyone constantly on edge waiting for the other shoe to drop.
So basically, it's a choose-your-own-adventure where all the endings suck. Fantastic. But seriously, what can we, the average Joe and Jane, do about any of this? Do our actions even make a damn difference in the grand scheme of things?
Absolutely, our actions matter. We can't just sit back and let the so-called experts and politicians run the show. We need to be informed, engaged citizens, and hold our leaders accountable for their decisions.
Okay, I'm listening. What can we actually do? Give us some practical advice, not just a bunch of feel-good platitudes.
First, we need to educate ourselves about the issues. And I don't just mean reading some bullshit headlines on Twitter. We need to dig deeper, understand the historical context, and look at the situation from multiple perspectives.
So basically, we need to become armchair diplomats and geopolitical experts. Sounds like a lot of work. I'd rather just crack open a beer and watch the game.
Look, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Start by reading some reputable news sources, following some experts on social media, and having conversations with people who have different viewpoints than your own.
Okay, that's doable. What else?
Second, we need to get involved in the political process. Vote for candidates who support peace, diplomacy, and international cooperation. Contact your elected officials and let them know where you stand on the issues.
So basically, we need to become political activists. I hate those guys. They're always so preachy and self-righteous.
You don't have to be a flag-waving zealot, just an informed and engaged citizen who's willing to stand up for what they believe in.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else?
Third, support organizations that are working to promote peace, diplomacy, and global understanding. There are a lot of great nonprofits out there doing amazing work, and they need our support.
So basically, we need to donate our hard-earned money to save the world from itself.
Look, it's not just about money. It's about volunteering your time, spreading awareness, and being part of the solution.
Okay, I get it. We need to be informed, engaged, and active citizens. But let's be real. Most people are too busy worrying about paying their bills and keeping up with the Kardashians to give a shit about global politics.
Yeah.
So what's your message to those folks who are just trying to survive the day-to-day grind?
My message to them is that this shit matters. What happens in the world affects all of us, whether we realize it or not. It affects our economy, our security, and our way of life. We can't just bury our heads in the sand and pretend it's not happening.
So basically, we're all in this together, whether we like it or not.
Precisely. We're all crewmates on Spaceship Earth, and we need to work together to keep this thing from crashing and burning.
All right, folks, there you have it. The world's a goddamn mess, but it's not hopeless. We've got the power to change things, but it's going to take all of us working together. So get off your asses, get informed, get involved, and maybe, just maybe, we can steer this ship in the right direction. And on that note, we're wrapping up another deep dive. Thanks for listening, you magnificent bastards. Stay curious, stay engaged, and stay the fuck away from those glowing mushrooms. This is the Deep Dive, signing off.